I ignored 5 backpacking rules and my trips instantly got better. Some backpacking rules sound smart, but they secretly ruin trips. After over 100 solo backpacking trips through the Sierra, the Mojave, and the Canadian Rockies, I realized that 5 of these rules were making my trips harder, not better. And in this video, I'll show you which 5 rules I ditched and how ignoring them made backpacking easier and way more fun. And if you want more trail tested tips like this, I put out videos every week based on over 3,000 miles of real world trips, so hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more. All right, rule number 1. Trips should always push your limits. So there's this common belief that backpacking is supposed to push your limits, that it's the one time of the year you're supposed to go all in and really push yourself to the extremes. I bought into that completely at first. When I was dragging myself into camp at dusk, legs shot, and barely able to cook before collapsing, I didn't question it. I figured that's what backpacking was supposed to feel like. But that changed over the years. After enough trips, it started to sink in. Backpacking doesn't have to mean getting wrecked every time you go out. Early on, backpacking is going to challenge you, no matter what. You're figuring out your kit, adjusting to trail pacing, probably carrying too much gear or a sleeping pad that's just barely comfortable. For me, adding extra difficulty on top of all that didn't make me a trail veteran. It just made the whole thing feel like work instead of something that you wanted to keep doing. So these days, I do still plan some trips that push me, but that's a choice now. It's not the default. If a route has brutal climbs or long days, it's because I decided on that route for a reason, not because I felt like I had to throw in some big challenge just to call it backpacking. Funny thing is, some of the trips I remember best aren't the hardest ones, they're the easier ones. Those long rolling ridgelines with room to breathe, 6 miles a day instead of 15, stopping early enough to savor dinner instead of just shoveling it down half asleep. Those kind of days make up some of my favorite trips. So if you're new to all this, here's the thing that nobody really says out loud. You don't need to feel like you have to prove anything. The trail is going to show you what's hard on its own. You don't need to pile on extra difficulty just to feel like the trip counts. All right, rule number 2, backpacking equals hiking all day. So on a similar note to rule number 1, for a long time, I thought that the best backpacking days were the ones where you spent the entire day hiking, sun up to sundown, just knocking out the miles. So that's how I planned trips, picking mileage that would keep me moving all day until dark. And there's definitely an appeal there. Miles get ticked off, you fall into a groove, and for a lot of folks, that feels like accomplishment at the end of the day. But for me, eventually I noticed how little I was actually taking things in. The views, the wildlife, even the quiet moments. Too many nights I was staggering into camp, wrecked, and barely even remembering the trail. So I started to rethink how I planned my days. I started planning shorter days and leaving space for things that I used to rush past. Now I'll stop by a creek, toss down my sit pad and make a cup of coffee and just sit for a while. Some afternoons I'll get into camp early and take a nap in the hammock, like this one from Eno that I'll link below. And one of my favorite things to do on a trip is after I get camp set up, I'll climb up on a nearby ridge and watch the sunset. These moments stick with me way longer than the days I staggered in after 14 miles, cooked in the dark, and barely remembered the trail. Now, mileage does still matter, especially on longer routes, but if you're out there to enjoy where you are and not how far you've gotten, slowing down a bit might be the smartest move you make. And hey, if you like this kind of myth-busting backpacking stuff, remember to subscribe because I share new trail-tested tips every week. All right, rule number 3, solo backpacking is too dangerous. So as somebody who has completed over 100 solo backpacking trips, I get this one a lot, especially from newer backpackers or well-meaning friends and family, that backpacking alone just sounds dangerous. And it's not totally off base. solo backpacking is higher risk in some ways. If you get injured, there's no one to help. If your gear fails, there's no backup. It's all on you. But that doesn't mean that it has to be reckless, as long as you're well prepared with a system to manage those risks every time. Solo backpacking has become one of my favorite ways to experience the backcountry because it's the one time where I don't have to sync with anyone else's pace or a group's plan. I can start early or sleep in, reroute mid-trip if the mood changes, and camp somewhere just because it feels right, not because we locked it in on the map ahead of time. That freedom is kind of hard to describe, but if you've felt it, you know. And the reason that solo trips work for me is simple. I prepare for them. I carry a Garmin InReach satellite device so I can contact emergency services as something goes south. And I'll link the exact model I use down in the description. It's the same one I take on every solo trip. And I always leave a detailed trip plan with someone back home. My route, where I'm camping, when I expect to return, and what to do if I don't check in. I have plans for gear failures, but more than anything, I don't take unnecessary risks while solo, and I keep my trips well within my skill level. Backpacking alone takes being dialed and knowing exactly where your limits are. When you approach it that way, the payoff is huge. The clarity, the flexibility, the quiet peace you get out there, it's an experience you can't quite get anywhere else. Now, the next rule I ignore, some people will call this reckless, but it's actually safer than you think. Rule number 4, always cook your food away from your campsite. So you'll hear this one all the time. Cook at least 100 feet from your campsite. No exceptions. And in grizzly bear country, that's non-negotiable. Brown bears are a real risk, and spreading out your sleep, your food, and your cook zones is one of the few ways to keep them from following a scent trail right to your tent. But here's what rarely gets mentioned. Not all bears or trips call for the same protocol. In black bear country, like the Appalachian Trail, the Sierra, or most of the Pacific Northwest, the priority becomes food storage, not cooking distance. Take Yosemite National Park, one of the most bear-dense parks in the country. The rangers there will grill you on bear canister rules before they hand over a permit, but the rangers don't tell you to cook 100 feet from camp. And in places where there's no bears at all, like desert basins or alpine shelves, the real nuisance is rodents. And they care more about your crumbs than how far away you boiled your water. Now, if cooking away from camp makes you feel safer, do it. Some folks just sleep better knowing that their stove and food prep were 100 feet away. But it really depends on where you are and what the local regulations say. So always double check them. The goal is simple. Know the rules for where you're hiking, stay smart about wildlife, and make choices that fit the conditions without cutting corners on safety. And if you guys disagree with that last one, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, rule number 5, no electronics allowed in the backcountry. So some people head into the backcountry to fully unplug. And if that's what makes the trip meaningful for you, that's awesome. But there's this idea floating around that you have to do it that way, and that bringing electronics somehow means you're doing it wrong. But for me, bringing a few electronics doesn't ruin the experience, it actually makes it better. I know that's not for everyone, but here's why it works for me. So especially on solo trips, the nights can feel pretty long. And in winter, it can be dark by 6 p.m. You're full, you're tucked in early, and there's nothing to do but stare at the ceiling of your tent. So my preference, I like to watch downloaded movies or some Netflix on my phone in the backcountry. Again, not for everyone. But for me, it's one of my favorite ways to wind down after dark. Same thing goes for listening to music or a podcast. Sometimes it's nice to have a little background noise while you're winding down at camp. Now, if you're going to watch something or listen to anything, remember to use headphones if you're around other people. And don't let the screen take over the reason you're out there. But electronics or not, the point is the same. Make your nights on trail something you actually look forward to. Now, I don't think that any of these rules were ever meant to make backpacking harder. They probably came from good intentions. But once I stopped treating them like absolutes, my trips got lighter, smoother, and way more fun to plan. So if this helped take some of the pressure off, check out this next video where I actually followed some of the worst backpacking advice I was given, and yeah, it went badly. So get out there, hike your own hike, make the trip your own, and I'll see you on the trail.